we are going to talk about our review. This is a spoiler review for Joker 2. Folie Deux. I'm not calling it Joker. Folie Deux.
I'm sorry, I forget what Folie Deux means.
Shared delusion.
Yes. Shared delusion. Yes. Okay. Knowing that, it doesn't make any sense with the plot of the movie. This was obviously a disappointment compared to the first one.
It was.
Both in terms of the cultural impact, but also just the story itself. It was just a huge missed opportunity. A lot of people are saying it feels like they're making a 2.5-hour long apology for the first movie. And I don't exactly see that argument, but it feels like a huge missed opportunity to write the story about Joker and Harley Quinn that Suicide Squad didn't write because they were afraid of backlash.
Well, that's not what this is, because Joker has
this
absolutely...
is the complete opposite.
Yeah, this is the complete opposite.
Basically, they inverted the story that we're familiar with in terms of Joker and Harley's love story to make it so that Harley is manipulating Arthur Fleck, the Joker. She's the one who is lying and manipulating him the whole time. She's not particularly likable. I don't know if we're supposed to root for them.
And most of this movie takes place with the backdrop of the trial of Arthur Fleck, which is he's on trial for all of the murders that he committed in the first one.
Basically, Harley, Lee, she's called Lee in the movie.
She is. They do call her Harley at one point, so her name is actually
Harley Quinzel. She is a hybristophiliac who she voluntarily commits herself so that she can get a chance to meet Arthur because she's obsessed with him, and she manipulates him to essentially to throw the trial. At least as far as I can tell, that's what her goal was.
Yes.
John Z in the chat says, I disagree. I believe there's a lot deeper meaning woven into what this movie is trying to deliver. The key there is trying to deliver.
Trying does not mean properly executed.
The biggest problem that I have with this movie is that there's a lot of stuff that just isn't adequately shared on screen.
Right. There's a lot that's insinuated and implied, but it's really just a way to weasel the story out of committing one way or the other. And it's confusing because at the end of the first movie, it's open-ended. You're supposed to not know yet whether the entire thing was a delusion. And then they kind of shattered that within the first 2 minutes, showing that it all actually did happen. And he had all of these crazed fans, and he's an idol to these people. And they made a movie about him. And he's a true crime celebrity, basically. So none of it was a delusion in the first movie.
Well, right, and that's a major issue with Harley's character in totality, because it really does revolve around Harley being this super fan stalker who kind of wants this fairy tale ending and is playing into what Arthur has always wanted, which is just comfort or a place in the world and someone to care about him. That was the highlight of the first movie with Thomas Wayne. He kept going to Thomas Wayne being like, I'm your son, and this whole thing is just watching Lady Gaga and not even really a competent version of Harley Quinn. I felt like there's so much they could have done with a Harley Quinn character that they just completely gave up on.
Can you give me an example? Like, what do you think they could have
I just felt she could have been a little bit more wild. So it's at first, like, when she's talking to the lawyer out in the public, when all the cameras are watching them, she's like, you don't know him the way I do, and you're not doing him any justice. But she's not quite playing a sane character at that point.
They hook you with her starting the room on fire.
Right.
When you think you're going to get more of that, and you really don't.
You're going to get Harley Quinn the way that you sort of expect, and that just doesn't happen. I mean, obviously a big part of Harley's, cause is to upset the system, and that should be the same as the Joker, but they kind of have him give up on that. But she was trying to use his fame to push the same idea he initially had, and the second he let up on that, she was out.
I will give some strong points to this movie. The cinematography on this film is very, very good. Okay, so one of the things that it felt like they wanted to do was, by making this a musical, it allows them to break from the scenes that they're shooting and create these elaborate old Hollywood sets that are shot beautifully, lit beautifully done in a very, very competent fashion. But the problem is, guys, every time a scene gets going that looks like it's going to get really, really good, and they do. They get going. Yeah. They pick up momentum. Joaquin Phoenix is on point. They cut from it. They stop deadpan to just go into a musical number that destroys the entire flow of it. There's an entire scene here where Fleck is being interviewed by someone inside the jail, and the score is on point. It's picking up in momentum. The tension is there, and then it just breaks to a musical number that doesn't even hold the same tension as the interview was. Like, you expect something bad to happen to this interviewer because of the way the tension rises with the score, and he's on point. The interviewer won't let up. He stays in his face. It's really, really good. Stop!
Yep.
Time for a musical number. Now, here's the thing. Yeah. If you never liked musicals, this is not the movie that's going to change your opinion.
But even if you like musicals and you're one of these people they were trying to reach with Lady Gaga, if you're a Gaga fan who went to see this, you would be also disappointed because the musical numbers were extremely underwhelming and she didn't belt in any of them.
No, and I feel so conflicted.
She's going to build a mountain, though.
I feel so... Oh, my God. If I hear the word mountain again in the next month, I'm going to smash my head against the wall. I feel conflicted with the musical elements because I like them using music, but I wish that they had done that, but it wasn't a full-blown musical because he was like using music as a way to cope with his situation, which I liked and I thought was
I don't like
cool
that because that doesn't make any sense. He has plenty to cope with in the first movie. Why isn't he doing it in the first movie?
He's constantly dancing around. He's even playing out, going on the Murray show and like, oh, hey, shaking hands and like spinning around and doing a little dance. So clearly music, even in the first movie, was a way that he was coping with kind of his downfall and his descent to madness. But there were too many songs in this that were lighthearted, and there was just too many of them. If there was like 3 musical numbers and one was like lighter and more hopeful, and then the rest were like dark and ominous, it would have been, I thought, a lot better. But that's not the direction they went with the story at all.
Save it for late. And that's okay. So there's another scene in here where he's interviewing Puddle, or he's cross-examining Puddle, and it does not give way to a musical. It allows the scene to play out.
So well done.
And if they had allowed all the other scenes that got cut into in here without music to play just like this one, you get to see where your money is being made in this because Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic in those scenes. And that's the problem, right? I see the skin, like the bones, just like his body. I see the skin and bones of a great movie that's just been wrapped in garbage that didn't need to be there purely for either spite or, I guess, artistic. What would you say? Like their own sort of like artistic hubris?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that this Arthur Fleck is crazy, but they didn't offer any insight into. Whoa. That's.
The money gun's like, I agree, Mary.
Wow, hello? You have a hot take.
It's applauding me? Okay, thank you for that.
No problem. Happy to help.
Okay, so to my point, they were offering like no insight into his psyche. It was all just speculation.
You know what I think would have really benefited is some type of like psychiatric element to this where he has to talk to like a therapist.
Well, they tried that.
They had that in the first movie, and then they of course gave up on it.
It should have been Harley.
Right. It should have
been. That's the story of Joker and Harley. Like, she should have been.
It should have been Harleen Quinzel.
Yes.
And then afterwards, she, voluntarily checked herself in, and then it was like, oh my God, I became so intrigued with him, and now I want to talk to him more. And then she commits herself, but they didn't do that angle. That's what I thought it was originally going to be based on the trailers and like having her in the more normal clothes and not the Harley getup. And they tried to present her in the trailers as being like normal, and she happens to be in Arkham with him. And it was like, oh, why is that happening? But they didn't do that because they didn't write this properly.
I did enjoy the only song that I enjoyed was the courtroom song.
Yes,
that was the
I
only
thought
one
that was good.
That I liked.
I kind of blocked it out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fan of musicals in general anyway, but if you're a fan of musicals, I still think that this wouldn't hit the mark.
Let's
Right.
Let's get into the elephant in the room. What happens to him? So there's a lot of people. What people are talking about is that this movie is a big fu to the fans of the original film. They say that they purposely destroy the character of the Joker. Do you want to explain how that happens in here? Because again, to its point, this is poor storytelling. Because to me, it didn't come across this way, but it did to you guys.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was confused by this as well, but after looking into some fan threads and explanations, I learned that if Arthur Fleck was the Joker in the first place, he had the Joker persona raped out of him. And I mean that literally. He was actually, they didn't show it, of course. They heavily implied it. He was gang raped by prison guards, and after that the Joker persona was dead. It was no more, and he was just Arthur Fleck.
But then also his friend in the movie is also killed.
Directly after he gets gang raped,
Yes.
or sodomized, whatever happened, we don't know. His friend, or maybe fanboy sycophant character, who's also an inmate, gets killed by the same prison guards, and then he's just left like lifeless, dead in the eyes, and he can't enter the Joker persona anymore.
So then when he goes back to court to deliver final his closing statements, he's not able to channel the Joker character, which causes Harley Quinn to abandon him.
But again, it's confusing.
These hoes ain't loyal.
They are not.
His lawyer in the beginning of the movie is trying to prove to the jury that he is not mentally competent and that he has multiple personality disorder.
He portrays that throughout the whole movie.
He actually is nuts.
He is nuts. He is, of course, yes, he is mentally ill, but they didn't actually conclude whether or not he has multiple personality disorder or if he's just channeling the Joker sometimes.
It bothers me so much that, he got raped. Apparently, that's, again, kind of, it's not 100% confirmed, but that, and then seeing his friend get killed,
I didn't take that.
Changed him. My problem is that he killed his own mother. He doesn't care about one friend that happened to die. You'd think that
And
would
if
just...
that was
It wasn't
gonna-
even his friend.
If that was going to matter, they would have had to spend more time developing the relationship between the two of them, and they didn't spend the time doing that.
And you'd think that if it was to bother him or it was to matter, this all would have just pushed him further down the Joker spiral. Like, there is no justice, and I need to, create this justice that I believe in, because he clearly, at the beginning, he had the lawyer, and like, she was really helping him, and
she was actually good at her job. That's the sad thing. They
pretty good
screwed
lawyer.
this poor lady.
right.
Yeah. Well, he fired her. And what we learned from the first movie is that Arthur Fleck being routinely mistreated and dehumanized is what brought the Joker out in him and caused him to behave violently.
So you think that
why
would make it worse?
Yes, exactly. So he's dehumanized in the worst way imaginable, and that killed the Joker? Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
You think it would actually make the multiple personalities worse.
And then we could have gotten some semblance of the big finish we were hoping for, where he goes full Joker and Harley teams up with him and the courthouse gets blown up. They go out and they start killing people. Big soundtrack, like big belting lines from Lady Gaga. They're killing people together. Or even if that doesn't happen and she still leaves him, then he goes into revenge mode and kills her.
And here's the other thing. I took a note last night.
And
where I was
Harvey
like,
Dent.
When I was watching the scene, like, again, I did not take it as him getting like sodomized. All I took that as he's getting his ass kicked. Like, I took that as just
it
Ford
was
beating
like
the
they
shit
took
out
his
of him.
clothes off
they took
first,
his
and then they
clothes
took him
off.
into the showers, and then the one guard says something about taking his. He asked the other guards to take his underwear
I
off.
didn't hear that line.
So I have to
didn't
assume
hear that line
So
either.
obviously that was like the most important line. I missed that.
And
I
they're
didn't
they're
hear
dragging him back to his cell, and he's in a vegetative state with only his underwear on, looking very disheveled. I had to assume that's what they were trying to.
I imagine the
agree.
people who are mad about this are mad about the same people that were mad when they made Terminator Dark Fate and they killed John Connor in the first 2 minutes of the movie. right? It's just an FU to the fans.
It was a Joel moment. It was like a Joel from The Last of Us moment. That was the golf club.
When I was seeing the scene, like if I was to, first of all, he's in his underwear like half the movie, so that didn't signal to me that he had been sodomized or raped or anything. What it said to me was that they wanted to take away every semblance of his dignity and then beat the shit out of him. The point is, though, that scene, as unforgiving as it was, doesn't cut to a musical number. Now, if the rest of the movie had an unflinching vision for its violence and its abuse of the character, it would have been more in tone with what the original film was telling you and could have followed in a much more suitable fashion.
Yes.
That's a problem because you keep cutting away from the type of movie that you made to go into these self-indulgent musical numbers, which, yes, look fantastic, but don't help your storytelling.
No, they do not.
Right? The best scene in here is when he's cross-examining Puddles. Yes,
that was
it is
fantastic.
He's shifting between accents. He keeps getting confused between being abrasive towards him and being like, "What do you mean? I like you."
Yes,
it's very disjointed and disconnected, which falls perfectly in line with his psyche.
Yeah,
there's so many decent ideas in this film that they don't follow through on.
I think what they should have done is made this a show and then have 7 episodes and each is a different day of the trial. And then some days you see the Joker, some days you see Arthur, and then you can see him slowly descending more into madness. Like he starts more as Arthur and then he descends into the Joker. And then the last episode was like pure chaos. He got out with the explosion. I just felt it would have been much more impactful to show the certainly different timelines, the established different days, and I just felt like it was missing a lot of structure.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you guys want to get into like the twist at the end. It's not really a twist.
Go for it.
But the way it ends is this other psychotic inmate
who is channeling Cameron Monaghan's Jerome from Gotham. If you ever saw Gotham.
Gotham is so good.
Yeah.
This other inmate who is supposedly crazier than him shivs him
after telling him a joke,
stabs him to death,
and it was telegraphed to high hell. You knew that was coming.
Well, I didn't understand why it wasn't really foreshadowed. Mm-hmm. It was telegraphed in that scene, but there was no foreshadowing.
No.
They just kind of cut to that guy's face a couple times earlier in the movie, and he looked like a little deranged, like everyone else did.
His character and then the one that Arthur got along with both needed more time on screen to make their respective arcs, which play into Arthur's story, more impactful. Like, I imagine, just my guess, but there's more from those characters on the cutting room floor that got filmed and didn't get used.
Probably, yeah. And, I understand that the first movie kind of establishes the Joker could be anyone and it happens to be Arthur. But by the end of 2, they kind of reestablished that he has followers. Like when he's walks out of the court, people are like, oh my God, this is him. We have to get him away from here. He has a cult and these people will do anything for him.
And when he abandons the persona, people get like Harley and then all these other people get up and leave the courtroom because he's abandoned the persona of Joker.
That should have been an opportunity to show that he even hates his own cult of personality.
Right.
And that he resents the people who idolize him because they're also dehumanizing him the way that Harley did.
Yeah.
She forced him to like wear the Joker makeup while they had sex.
Yeah.
And by the way, what
scene?
What was the pregnancy scare about?
Oh, right.
She's like,
Harley
by the way,
literally-
I'm pregnant, and then takes a big drag of a cigarette.
Yeah.
I'm like, 80s
so
based.
he finds out from his attorney that Harley has been lying to him about who she is to ingratiate herself. Mm-hmm. He calls her out, which is very unlike him. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, I don't know. I just wanted you to like me. By the way, I'm pregnant. Like, literally baby trapped this guy.
And he killed his mother in the first movie for lying to him.
Yes.
So clearly, that's not something that sits well with him. Why would he not kill her?
So she's like, I'm pregnant. And then she starts singing.
Right.
And then he's like, okay. Like, I'll go along with it. Whatever.
I did really like the shot, though, where she puts the lipstick on the glass and then he kind of moves.
There was like a heavy impact on that in the trailer.
Yeah. That is emblematic of one of the biggest problems of this movie, which is art for the sake of art, not for the sake of it actually being important. Why did she? That didn't matter.
What was the meaning of it?
And sometimes things do need to look cool, but I agree.
Like,
it's very artsy fartsy. It's very I know what the people want. This
Yeah.
is what they want. And true, it was very good marketing material and it did fit well in that scene. But the rest of the scene with her going, I'm pregnant, just did not jive with me.
You just know that music number where she's in a wedding dress was because they're like, what if we put Harley in a wedding dress?
Yeah.
And like think of the symbolism. Yeah. Like I'm just picturing some art nerd sitting there storyboarding this stuff out, and that's great, but it has to actually follow along with a cohesive story.
Yes.
And this movie lacks that in a lot of ways. Yeah. Look, and I'm going to be honest, I would have given this movie a higher rating than most because for me, story tends to be important, but not as important as having a charismatic, competent lead. And Joaquin Phoenix is very much that.
I do agree.
I do laugh because he's this, like, he's stick thin and he's all disheveled. But if you see side profiles of him, you get the glimpse of the Hollywood actor, which is he's got the high cheekbones. He's a good looking dude that they have to actually work hard to make not look like a good looking dude. But the point is, he's very, very good at his job. Whenever he's engrossed in a scene, one of the best ways, if you want to look at how good he is, it's not when he's performing or talking, it's when he's reacting to other people. So when he's being fed this joke by the crazy dude at the end, he just has this bemused smile on his face that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And he's a great actor. And I will give a lot of bad movies a lot of passes if you give me a really, really good lead. This movie, unfortunately, is overshadowed by a very, very incoherent formula with the music. Again, I think they could have cut those music scenes down to maybe 3 or 4 songs
and that
at
would have been
tops.
fine.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I completely agree there. I just felt like they didn't know how to make it a long movie, so they had to constantly repeat certain lines. They reused the certain music, and they overdid the kind of Joker pose. So in the first movie, he kind of leans back and he's smoking, and then it's the smoke around him, and it looks visually very cool. But they did that shot like 8 times in this movie. It's like the word mountain. They constantly were using the word mountain and the mountain singing. It's like they needed to just make it longer.
Would have been really funny if they would have gotten like a cigarette brand to be a sponsor for this movie.
Totally.
I don't think I saw really any branding.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
I don't think they're allowed to do that.
He's like pilfering cigarettes off of whoever will give it to him.
He's kissing boys for the cigarettes.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll kiss my friend, I guess. Give me one.
But like he's constantly smoking throughout the entire movie.
It just didn't feel as impactful as if you had like 2 or 3 shots where he was doing that.
It doesn't punctuate or intensify anything.
It's not just him either. It's literally everyone.
It is.
Literally everyone's doing it.
I mean, it was the 80s.
Well,
There were parts that were funny, though. I don't know if it was appropriate for me to laugh at some parts, but I guess that was the point.
I will also say that one of the biggest mistakes that they made in this movie is you get a ton, and I mean a ton, of establishing shots of the courtroom, which is a very famous courtroom in Manhattan.
Yes.
And unfortunately, anybody who's watched a lot of movies and television knows that courtroom. If you've ever watched a single episode of Law and Order, you've seen that courtroom. So the whole time it's done, then somebody mentions Gotham, like, oh yeah, this isn't happening in New York.
Actually, it is. There is a piece of paper, or maybe it's the news. It says New York State versus Arthur Fleck.
Okay.
Gotham is a city in New York State.
Not in the Penguin. In the Penguin, it's New Jersey.
Well, in this, they do establish there is a shot that says
I hate that.
New York State versus Arthur Fleck.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what state Gotham is in.
Well, Gotham's in New York.
It's like I don't want to know. I don't want to know what country Nanda Parbat is in. I don't. So, just my personal thoughts on it. Final thoughts?
It was
Boom or a doom?
Is it a boom or a doom? It was a doom.
It's a doom.
Doom. It was a massive disappointment, and while I do think that a lot of the cinematography is great, I think a lot of the performances are still pretty good, like Phoenix. I just think overall it was a disappointment.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.